Slam wrestling, what we do is traditional professional wrestling the way that you remember it. If you're thinking Bret the Hitman Hart, Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, if you're thinking the Four Horsemen in the NWA, I've been able to parlay in 22 countries on 4 different continents, as a coach in 9 different countries on 2 different continents since 1993. To this day, I owe my career to Lance Storm. Out of friendship, he trained me. I take it to a place in the match where it is real. I've become an overnight sensation in Japan. Foreign Wrestler of the Year. Number 1, I think it was Kenny Omega at the time. I was number 5. I'd been there for 5 months. If they ever launched that NXT Europe, I could see myself being a coach for them. Walk headlong into fear. It's going to be worse for you to look back and say, I wish, instead of saying, I did this, this, and this, and this, and that didn't work out, but I got to do it.
Rewind, recap, relive. For over 50 episodes, the revolutionary force in wrestling interview.
My guest today is an absolute veteran of the wrestling industry, an extremely acclaimed career spanning 30 years. He's a true pioneer, specifically in Europe, where he's now giving back to the next generation of stars. Fresh off Hell City Slam 4, please welcome the Rebel Starbuck.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. No, I'm very excited to get into your career. As I said, 30 plus years at this point in the wrestling industry. And I said, fresh off Hell City Slam 4, the biggest event for Finland wrestling event. And let's hear about it. Was it a successful defense?
Yeah, it was. So we had 7 matches on the card. Slam Wrestling Finland presents Hell City Slam every single year. So it's an annual staple now. It's always at the beginning of August. Okay. And it's funded by the city of Helsinki, so it's basically like cultural fund money. Yeah. And we don't sell any tickets. It's a free event for everybody. So regardless of who you are, where you come from, bring the whole family, come out and enjoy. It's out under the sun. Unfortunately, yesterday was a rainy day, so in the middle of the 4th match, no, it was a 3rd match actually. It started to rain cats and dogs. And for a moment, the people then they dissipated somewhere else, and part of them didn't come back, which is kind of a shitty thing because of course our events go on Fight TV since we're on Fight, and the overall though it was a good event. Yeah, as we had a better turnout for the first half than we did for the second, simply because once the rain came. We had to have a delay, so we had to have a pause in the middle of the show, and then we had to squeegee down the ring, wipe the ring down because we have a vinyl canvas.
Okay.
And then continue. So luckily, it wasn't a live event, because if it was, it was live in person, but it wasn't live on Fight. And if it were, we would have had a dragged out delay with nothing happening for about a half an hour otherwise.
Right. No, and I was going to ask, how is it? Because I'm assuming you were in the main event or close to defending the world title. So wrestling in a ring that was just rained on. I mean, did that change up the match at all for you?
Well, no, the thing is that so our crew went and they squeegeed down the ring afterwards, and they used just towels, just regular towels to wipe down the moisture. So luckily, by the time that my match came around, so 7th match on the card, the air, the wind, whatever have you, had dried out the ring to the degree that there was no slippery spots anymore. So with that in mind, for my match, and I think for pretty much all the other matches after the spell of rain, it was all right. So, but yeah, I had a tough match against the Arrow of Hungary, Icarus. So Icarus is him and his partner Dover, Icarus and Dover, were the Arrows of Hungary, and they were the top predominant tag team in all of Europe for about a 10-year plus period. And for WXW out of Germany, they are pretty much exclusive. Or let's say they've been booked for WXW, so they have favor of nations, I guess, in that way, as far as their bookings go. And I was able to procure Icarus for a booking here in Finland for Slam Wrestling now that he's gone solo. And the reason he's gone solo is because his partner Dover, he's got a powerlifting gym in Hungary, in Budapest. and also his other commitments, his work commitments and family commitments, whatever, they restrict him to the point where now the tag team is no more. And Icarus has decided to go solo, so he's looking to make a name for himself as a solo wrestler. And with his experience, the guy is incredibly talented. He's one of the top, most fluid wrestlers. He's got just tons and tons and tons of experience. We had a really good match, about 20 minutes, I would estimate. And yeah, it was as professional gets.
That's great to hear. No, and another talent you were able to procure for Hell City Slam was Vinny Pacifico, and thank you
Yeah.
to Vinny for putting us in touch too to make this happen.
Thanks to
But
Vinny.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks to Vinny. But is that something to expect for Hell City Slam, kind of procuring these talents from all over to come in for it?
Yeah, we have so Slam Wrestling. What we do is that first of all, we're not indie-rific in any way, shape, or form. So our form of professional wrestling is not AEW light. It certainly isn't what the majority and the bulk of indie wrestling is around the world. What we do is we generate more of a traditional slant on wrestling. So our production, not I wouldn't say production, but our flavor is very much, let's say, late 80s, early 90s. If you're thinking Bret the Hitman Hart, Ted DiBiase, the Million Dollar Man, if you're thinking the Four Horsemen in the NWA, maybe some Mid South UWF, whatever have you. That's what I grew up on, and because it's my company, because it's my business, and because I often draw the comparison, the analogy to a restaurant owner. So let's say if I'm in the restaurant business as a proprietor, I have the right to decide what my menu is. And I offer, if I'm a Chinese restaurant, I offer Chinese food. There's no point in anybody coming to a Chinese restaurant asking to have a hamburger. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
If you're a sushi restaurant, there's no point in coming there and ordering a pizza.
Right.
So with that in mind, what we offer is traditional professional wrestling the way that you remember it. And there's a lot of people that are very fond about the way that wrestling used to be versus the way that it is now. That's why we offer the alternative to what the wrestling world is now offering currently, which is the bulk of it being indie-rific. And that's where pro wrestling and Slam Wrestling Finland in particular gives you something else, something to sink your teeth into, which I think you'll find rather intriguing if you take a look at what our product is.
No, that's really cool that you're tapping into that niche because it's
Yeah.
definitely becoming the minority in professional wrestling. I'd say that style. So, and I'm sure that it's a good response so far from the fans. Right over when did Slam Wrestling start? I think 2019.
2018.
2018. Okay.
Yeah. So I've run wrestling, and I've been the primus motor, the main guy for pro wrestling in Finland for 21 years now. So
Wow.
since 2003, we've had pro wrestling domestically in Finland. I'm the pioneer of pro wrestling in Finland because I'm the guy that brought it here on an educational level. So I started teaching guys back in 2003. The Finnish crew, the very first Finnish group of students were taken in 2003. So therefore, yeah, I formulated or formed Slam Wrestling Finland in 2018 because I wanted to make wrestling a business entity. Up until then, it had been a nonprofit. It had been structured as a nonprofit, and many wrestling businesses around the world they're actually structured this way. It requires less from the business end, and also because of the fact that very few of the independent wrestling companies and promoters nowadays treat their businesses, quote, I use that loosely, quote unquote, businesses, as a business.
Right.
They more or less put on events as a hobby for their friends to impress and pop some local folks. Without thinking about bottom line, without thinking about wrestling as a business. And of course, wrestling as a business independently is very tough. to make into a business, it's very, very tough because the money is made at the gate. Most times, unless you have sponsors, unless you have co-ops that pump money, subsidiary money into your company, all the money is made at the gate. Maybe some merch sales here and there, and money at the gate. If you have a streaming service, maybe a bit of money off the streaming service, whatever have you. But really, the money is made at the gate. So how many asses are in the seats?
Yeah.
And with that in mind, it's independent wrestling because of the lack of television exposure, the lack of mass volume. Because even if you're, let's say, on YouTube, whatever have you, to grow on YouTube is a almost impossible thing because of the way the algorithm is built.
Extremely tough.
Yeah, it's everything. The way that the internet has gone nowadays, the way the algorithms work, you have to really pay to play. You have to pump money into it in such a way that you almost have to you have to restructure the back end of the actual platform
Right.
to manipulate the search terms, the words, whatever. You almost need like a coder, somebody who's into coding, who could help you with your company to that degree that they could like hack the back end to work into your favor. But
Right.
without that, to grow organically through, let's say, YouTube or whatever have you, is damn near impossible. And it seems like, WWE to a large extent has almost a lock because of their size on the searches and the relevance of what is searched for under the professional wrestling terminology on YouTube. So the vast majority of results, of course, will swing in their favor,
Yeah.
which is understandable. But with that in mind, like I said, we did structure our business as a business. So we're an LTD, limited company. We have shareholders, and we do have co-ops. It's very tough to get co-ops, but we do
Yeah.
have co-ops. And we're also on the world's largest sports streaming platform, which is Fight TV, which is so with all these things, in one kit and caboodle in our piece of business. I think that we're off to a pretty good start after the COVID years and after the war here in Europe with Ukraine and Russia, which has really been in how would you say, it's like hitting the brakes big time. It's like it's an impediment. It's an impediment.
No, but aside from that, a huge pat on the back from you for making all that happen for Finland. I mean, that's so cool that, like you said, a real business, shareholders, and Fight TV. That's huge. It is impressive. To take it back, if people are unfamiliar with your career and where you started,
Yeah.
I'd love to get into that because you were around some great names early on too. Chris Jericho, of course, trained by Lance Storm. Can you take us down the path that led you to being there?
Yeah, so I was living in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, which was 1992. I went to Alberta College of Art. So by trade, I'm a graphic artist. I'm very good at drawing, like as an illustrator.
Yeah.
If you remember Savage Sword of Conan comics back in the day, I'm not sure if you remember or whatever, but Marvel Comics used to do Savage Sword, which was a black and white, like magazine-sized comic book back in the 80s. And I was a huge collector of Savage Sword of Conan. So like my art style is very much like the old Marvel comics, the Incredible Hulk / Conan, whatever have you.
If I could, so I've heard you say that you, yes, at art college. Do you have any examples like lying around? Because I've been dying to see. If you have any right there.
Work, my artwork.
Of your artwork, yeah.
Yeah. If you go to Majalahti.com, so my actual real last name, Michael Majalahti,
Yeah.
Majalahti.com. If you go there, there's an artwork link, and you can check out some of my work from past commissions. But yeah, nonetheless, so I was living in Calgary, and I was going to this Alberta College of Art. To be honest with you, I hated it. I hated every single minute of it. I knew I wasn't going to be there. The interest rate was 18%. So I would have been paying out the ass until I was about maybe 60 years old, paying off my student loan if I would have gone all the way for 4 years. Right. I was there for one semester, and then I said, I'm not doing this. And at that point, I was on my own, didn't have a job. I was living in this one lady's basement. So I was renting out one of the rooms in her basement. And I remember talking to my parents on the phone, and they said, "Son, the money's drying up. You know, for my father's a minister. He's a preacher, right? So he'd saved up from his meager earnings, saved up money for my post-secondary education, and that money dried up super quick. So there wasn't a lot. You know, when people say that these preachers rip people off, and just tithing, just feeding the machine."
Right.
It doesn't. I'm sorry, it doesn't happen that way. No, that's my dad was straight down the middle, and that money dried up quick. So he said to me, "Son, either you got to come back home or you got to find a job." And so I found a job by the grace of God, and it was for Alberta Bottled Water. So I would drive these 20-liter bottles of bottled water, like distilled water and spring water, whatever have you, around the city of Calgary. It was like 1 million people, right? And that was my job for about a year. During that time, I actually delivered water one day and plus a water cooler, as I remember it, to this taxi joint it was the industrial sector of Calgary. And I went to this place in the middle of summer, and I entered and I looked in the walls, and they had these pictures, black and white pictures of pro wrestlers in these frames on the wall. And I asked the proprietor, I said, "Why do you have pictures of wrestlers on the walls?" And he said, "Well, I used to be a manager, or like a wrestling manager." Yeah, yeah. Well, for who? Well, who are you? Oh, for Stampede Wrestling, for Stu Hart Stampede Wrestling.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Abu Wizal, the manager of Karachi Vice.
Wow.
Yeah, the manager of Muck and Singh, the manager of Hiroshi Hase back in the day, et cetera, right? Johnny's, I think, was it Johnny Smith? Some other people, but Karachi Vice. So,
just by chance of delivering water too, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I asked them, I said, "Is there any professional wrestling, currently in Calgary?" And he said, "No, there's none, but this autumn there's a new promotion starting up, and if you want, I can put you in contact with them." I was like, "What, are you kidding?" "Yeah, of course I want." And at the time, you got to remember, I mean, this was 1992, yeah, the summer of 92. I was 19 years old at the time, right? And I'm thinking to myself, well, I want to get into the wrestling business, but like, well, what's the catch? Why would they receive me?
Yeah.
Back then, you got to think that professional wrestling was it was tight as a drum. It was the mafia.
Yeah.
You didn't have the internet, and you didn't just walk in and just say that, "Hey, I want to be a wrestler." Didn't work that way. You had to know somebody. You had to like get in and know somebody. So with that in mind, I didn't know anybody. But Abu Wizal gave me Beef Wellington's. No, it was Steve DeSalvo. So sadistic Steve DeSalvo, who used to wrestle for Stu Hart, and back in Eastern Canada for Gino Brito's International Wrestling, he used to wrestle as Steve Strong. And also he was in Puerto Rico for Carlos Colon. He was one of their big stars there. So he's jacked on the gas, a big guy. One of my favorite wrestlers from my youth, right, in Canada. Yeah. Anyway, he had a realty office. He was a realtor at the time in Calgary. He had gotten out of the wrestling business, gotten into the realty business, and he was a realtor. I called him up, cold called him, introduced myself, said, "My name's Mike. I'm an artist." That was my line. That was my in. I'm an artist. And I said, "I'd like to meet you, and I'd like to see that I believe I'd have something to offer. I've heard that you are starting up a wrestling operation this autumn." And he reluctantly said that drop by the office. But when I got there, they had these glass dividers, like they were actually like walls, glass walls, I would say, in the actual realty office.
Yeah.
where it was after hours. So like they had closed shop and he was in his office and I was sitting there in the waiting room. I could see him the entire time through the glass wall. And I swear it felt like he just wanted me to leave.
Yeah.
Didn't want to receive me. But I'm a persistent son of a bitch. It's like, I'm going to get into the wrestling business. And I stayed until it's like he's got to either get out of his office and leave through that same door that I came in through,
Right.
or then he's got to receive me, right? He's got to
Yep.
have a meeting with me. So he decided, okay, so come in here. And I made the same pitch. I said, my name is Mike, and I'm an artist. And I showed him my artwork. I had a briefcase with my artwork in it. And I thought that my in to the wrestling business would be drawing pictures for, like, let's say their weekly programs or something, right?
Yeah.
Caricatures or whatever else. But that's not what Steve DeSalvo saw in me. What he heard was my voice. God has gifted me with many talents, and one of them is the fact that I have a good voice. And I actually utilize that voice nowadays. I'm one of the most utilized voiceover speakers in Finland for B2B, B2C, and export.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in English presentations, largely like in American English, also in Finnish, but
What are some
80% of the Finnish.
projects? I'm curious, like what have you voiceovered?
Do you know industrial giants like ABB?
ABB,
Yeah.
possibly. So like
Okay. If you look them up,
commercials?
ABB.com, I've spoken for McDonald's, for Battery, for
Okay.
Ford Mustang. I've spoken for like tons and tons of large
Right.
companies who've got offices all around the world. For example, Metso, which is a Finnish company, but they are all around. They're in Asia, they're in Africa, they're in South America. And for example, the last time I spoke, one of my commissions for them through Finland, they said that all of their offices around the world say that Michael is the guy that has to speak for us. It doesn't
Seems
matter
nice.
what the office is. They said, this is our guy. He's the one who has to do all of our presentations. So it's like, and they're industrial also. So like the thing is that, like, I've been able to create a name for myself with my voice
Mm-hmm.
uh, for over 10 years now as one of the top voiceover speakers out of Finland. So with that in mind, when I was 19 years old, I still, even at an early time at that stage, I had a voice. And with that, that's what Steve DeSalvo heard. He heard that I had a voice that could parlay into the presentation. And they made me the ring announcer and TV commentator for local cable television in Calgary.
Wow. And so that was your in. So what promotion was that for?
Rocky Mountain Pro Wrestling out of Calgary.
Rocky Mountain Pro Wrestling in Calgary.
Yeah.
Wow. And I agree, your voice is great. I mean, even the voice messages you were sending before the interview, I was like, this is a very distinguished voice. I wish I could have seen you back then doing this pitch like you're describing, because I feel like you have such confidence now, like your voice, like it
I
doesn't
have confidence
shake
now,
like
but you got to remember, I was 19 years old.
yeah, no,
I did
exactly.
not have the same confidence then. So now I don't give a damn. I will hard sell myself to anybody. It's
Yeah,
at the age of 51 now. I just I know who I am. I know what I have to offer. I know pro wrestling like the back of my hand.
right.
So with that in my mind, I don't care if it's Vince McMahon or if it's Triple H. I don't care who it would be. I can sell myself to anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a great skill to have. And so being in their Rocky Mountain Pro Wrestling, when do the names like what we know today, like Chris Jericho or I think Edge as well, Lance Storm, like when do they walk through those doors? Are you there?
They
They
were
already
already there.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, Lance and Chris, they started in 1990, I believe, the end of 1990. That was when they debuted. So they were already working like for a couple of years, and they were in Calgary. So the guys on the crew then were Lenny St. Clair, who was Dr. Luther, or just Luther in AW right now.
Yeah.
He was there. Then there's Lance Storm, Chris Jericho, Beef Wellington, who was Chris Benoit's old tag team partner from Stampede. Right. He was one of the bosses, so he was actually a co-promoter with Steve DeSalvo.
Okay.
DeSalvo was there. Johnny Smith was there, who used to wrestle for All Japan Pro Wrestling
Yep.
back in the early 90s. If you remember in WCW, there's a guy called Chip the Firebreaker.
Great name, but I don't
like in 91.
Okay.
He wrestled with Todd Champion. They were I forget what their tag team name was, but Chip, they were tag team champions in WCW, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. But they were, that was a dark period, by the way, in WCW. But nonetheless, yeah, Chip the Firebreaker was there. Yeah, there were several people that came and went, but these were some of the names.
Yeah. And so at that time, like you said, you were ring announcing, I believe commentating as well. What made you decide to take the plunge to actually become a wrestler?
Well, here's the thing. I come from a family of meager means. My father is a minister, as I said. He's a pastor.
Yeah.
And we never had a lot of money. Never did. So I've always kicked and scratched for all my pennies and dimes. I was living literally hand to mouth in Calgary. I was working for this bottled water company, and every 2 weeks they'd pay me by check, and I'd bring it to the bank, cash it immediately, because on the Friday that I'd go to work when I was going to get paid, it was customary that I would have under $10 anymore in my account, and that last $5 I would take out to fill up my gas tank so that I could get to work in order to cash my check on that Friday to be able to eat for the next 2 weeks and put more gas into my tank to make it to work for the next 2 weeks. I was living that tight, that hand to mouth. Literally, the last $5 went
not a
into
dollar to waste. Yeah, that's
not a dollar. I didn't have a quarter to waste.
Yeah.
In Canada, we call them loonies. They're the $1 coins. I didn't have a loonie to waste. So with that in mind, wrestling training cost at the time, I believe, because it was held under the Hart Brothers Wrestling School banner. I believe it was something in the range of about, was it 5,000 Canadian? I think it would cost for the entire course 5,000. It was between 3 and 5, but nonetheless. So I'm just going to ballpark it. I think it was 5.
Yeah.
And so what happened was that I knew that I'd never have the money, but I got to be friends with Lance Storm during my time as a ring announcer and TV commentator, and we became training partners at the gym. It was actually called The Gym. That was the name of the gym, The Gym. We would go 3 times a week, and Lance and I became buddies, and we trained at the gym, at this gym, and we were training partners for 1 year. During that year, Lance says to me in one training session, at the end of the training session, he says, "I see the passion that you have for pro wrestling, and if you want, I'll train you." As a friend, it was out of friendship he trained me. Not there was no money exchanged, none whatsoever. To this day, I owe my career to Lance Storm. And there was another guy at the time called Carl Moffat, who used to wrestle for Stu Hart Stampede Wrestling as Jason the Terrible under the hockey mask. Okay. And he was in Puerto Rico, New Japan, All Japan, whatever have you, as Jason the Terrible. He was actually supposed to go to the NWA. I think Ric Flair was the booker at the time, back in '89. He was supposed to debut, or I think around the same time that Muck and Singh became Norman the Lunatic. Mm-hmm. But they had that huge. It was a crash up in Banff, Alberta, in the Rocky Mountains. David Boy Smith was in the van. There was Carl was in the van, etc., etc. And the guys got mangled. They broke their legs. Davy Boy, he almost damn near broke his neck on the windshield. Blah blah blah. Anyway, the point being, that was the thing that did end Carl's career. But Carl still came back after that injury, and he got his knees redone, and he wrestled on and off as Jason the Terrible in Calgary in Western Canada, even after the injury. And he was my other trainer.
Okay.
Yeah. So every Wednesday night, Carl would hold open ring, or how would you say, it's like for beginners and for like just the guy starting out. He'd hold like an open session. We'd go there for a few hours, and he would run us through the paces. And he'd beat the living shit out of us. Carl was legit. I mean, he was trained by Stu Hart.
Yeah.
In the dungeon, literally in the basement, in the dungeon.
So stretching.
Yeah, he was stretched, and they were not kind to him. The Harts were not kind to him. So with that in mind, he was as old school gets, and Carl was like a Hell's Angel, right? He was a biker.
Okay.
So the thing is that when he would train us, he would hit us with everything. He would like headbutts, bone on bone. He would make sure that his skull connected with your skull. And so the thing is, there's no bullshit there. It's like anybody who says wrestling is fake has no fucking clue. They just have no fucking clue. And he would beat the living shit out of us, out of me personally. And I remember one time he had me in the corner, and he was giving me the shoulder blocks in the stomach in the corner, right? He's a big man. He's like 6'5", 6'6". And it hurt. I mean, he's driving his shoulder into my guts at the age of 19, 20, whatever I was at the time in 93. Anyway, I put my hand in the way to blunt the actual blow, and he felt my hand go between his shoulder and my gut. And he stood me up in the corner. He said, "If you ever fucking do that again, I'll tear your fucking head off."
Wow.
And at that point, I said, "Sir, you can hit me with anything.
Do whatever you want." Yeah.
Do whatever you want." Yeah. And I lost the fear. And I'm so glad that happened. I lost the fear, and I was able to treat it as a real thing from that point forward. And a lot of guys in my career have actually, I take it to a place in the match, in the context of the match, where it is real. It's like Terry Funk said in his book, it's more than hardcore, or more than just hardcore, many, many years ago. He said that when it looks like I'm going crazy, you must understand I am going crazy. When it looks like I'm hurting, you must understand I really am hurting. So I learned that from Carl Moffat. I learned to go there, to that place, to go to the edge, but not go over.
Yeah.
And with that in mind, that was the beginnings of my career. That was so Carl Moffat, Lance Storm, my two coaches who facilitated my career. Neither one of them ever asked for a single penny of my money. Yeah.
An incredible story. And it's cool because you really got the best of both worlds too. I don't know how Carl was as a technician, but Lance, one of the best technicians in the business of all time. And then the viciousness, it seems, of Carl.
Yeah.
It's what we have now as Rebel Starbuck. With someone like Lance, like I said, one of the best technicians in the business, is there anything that he passed on to you? I'm sure a lot of things that you still put in and use now, not only in your career, but like giving back to the next generation, like I said, training.
I think there's a philosophy. I think the number one thing that Lance taught me, and I've heard that he's told this to other people like since, is there's three things that you need to even have a remote chance at the possibility of making it in our industry. Nobody's going to guarantee you that you're going to make it.
Yeah.
But even to have the chance, you need three things. You need the look. So it's your moneymaker right here. It is your body. It is your gear. The presentation, the visual presentation of what you bring to the table. Your look. Then it is your skill set. Whatever you can produce bell to bell. And how cohesive and coherent you are, and how well you can adapt to anyone else's style within that skill set. Number two. Number three is charisma. You either have it or you don't. You either connect with the audience or you don't. The worst thing in our business that you can do is leave people with this feeling of, he's all right. It's the worst.
Yeah.
Either it's like, that fucking prick, I hate his guts. Or then it's like, man, this guy is the shit. I love this guy.
Yeah.
It's one or the other, but it can't be in between. So you must have the charisma, the skill set, and the look to even have a chance at making it in this business. And luckily, by the grace of God, as a natural athlete, up until today, at the age of 51, I'm still natural. I can go to any piss test. I can take any blood test. There's nothing in my system. I just eat clean, live healthy, put the time in,
Yeah.
do the work. And I've been able to parlay in 22 countries on 4 different continents, as a coach in 9 different countries on 2 different continents, as a wrestler in 22, once again, on 4 different continents. Since the year 1993, for 30 years as an active competitor, plus 32 years in total in the wrestling business. I've been able to parlay my skill set, my talent, my persona, because I have a bit of every one of those attributes.
Right.
I'm not saying I'm the best. I'm not saying I'm the most complete package out there, but I have enough of each one of those things. And the number one thing that I have above all, over all the other attributes, is I have the charisma. And this has been proven in Japan, for example, which was my career goal. So for me, WWE was never my career goal. For whatever reason, it just never was. I wanted to go to Japan. And I didn't just get to go to Japan. I became a star overnight. The 24th of July, 2010, I debut in Tokyo for Yoshihiro Tajiri's Smash company. And it's a dual show. It's an afternoon matinee plus an evening show. I go over Hajime Ohara. I absolutely trounce him. I basically almost damn near squashed him. Wow. On the afternoon show. In the evening, I beat Tajiri for the title. I become an overnight sensation in Japan. All of the newspapers, all of the medias, from Tokyo Sports, all the way down to Samurai TV, all the way down to Weekly Pro Wrestling Magazine, they were writing about me. I became a star literally overnight. I had been there for under 5 months. And at the end of the year, Weekly Pro Wrestling Magazine does a year-end poll for every single company in Japan, covering every company, every wrestler. There's Gaijin of the Year, Foreign Wrestler of the Year, most popular. Number 1, I think it was Kenny Omega at the time.
Yeah.
I was number 5. I'd been there for 5 months.
It's amazing.
Out of covering all of the companies in Japan, from New Japan all the way down, I was number 5. So you got to understand, it's like the fact that, like, charisma is the number one thing for anybody.
Yeah.
If you look at anybody who's ever made it in our business, they have massive charisma. From Roman Reigns to Stan Hansen to Bruiser Brody to Ric Flair to Dusty Rhodes to Hulk Hogan to Macho Man Randy Savage, etc., etc., etc. Number one attribute: charisma.
And you had it. The overnight sensation. And what were you, about 18 years into your career at that point in 2010?
So 2010, yeah. So I would have been, so basically like 16 years since my debut and change. Yeah, 18 years in the business at that point. Yeah. So I called that my Sweet 16 when I wrote my book. So if anybody is actually interested, I do have a book out. It's on Crowbar Press. So if you crowbarpress.com, I wrote it between 2010 and 2015. It was put out in 2017. It was released finally. And it's called Battleground Valhalla. Battleground Valhalla. It's also available on Kindle, but as a hard copy through Crowbar Press. And in that book, I chronicle, one of the chapters is called Sweet 16. And I wrote the book, no ghostwriter, by the way. It's just me, personally. Just me. Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, you're a great storyteller. I could see.
Yeah, because I'm a good storyteller too. Yeah. Yeah. So, and I have a way with words. I'm really good with the English language. I'm also a lyricist. I'm a singer in 4 different bands, actually 2 regular bands, 2 project bands, but nonetheless, so I'm a singer. And I've been a lyricist now for well over 25 years. So I've written probably, without lying, somewhere in the neighborhood of over 200 songs.
Wow.
Yeah.
I saw you. Did you do a cover for Bad Street Atlanta?
Yeah, with one
Yeah.
of my bands. Yeah, Bad Street
So
USA. We also plagiarized the video. We redid the video, and we did the song. And actually, Miranda Gordy, who's Terry Bam Bam Gordy's daughter, who wrestles in the States,
yeah.
she uses our version of Bad Street USA as her ring entrance music.
Now that's really cool.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So yeah, so with that in mind, so I wrote the book Battleground Valhalla. Came out in 2017.
Yeah.
And it's still available
Okay.
as a hard copy and as a Kindle download if you want to purchase it. But nonetheless, in that book, Sweet 16 covers my debut in Japan. That was my crowning moment. The highest point, the highest pinnacle of my career came in 2010, and it lasted for about a 2-year period, 2010, 2011, 2012. I would say that was the apex of my career. I've had better matches since then.
Yeah.
But I would say, like, physically, what you can produce, the age, I was what, 37, 38 years old, to be at that age, and you're flying to Japan monthly and blah blah blah. So I've got, like, I'm going to Japan next month. Okay. So Tajiri is going to have his 30th anniversary in pro wrestling, and because he's been the most influential person in my pro wrestling career, I'm going to go over for his anniversary show. So it'll be my 23rd Japanese tour
At 51 too, and
at 51.
still delivering. That's great.
Yeah.
I want to ask you this question. With WWE doing more international PLEs now, they're saying, and you being the pioneer for Finland wrestling, how do you think a PLE in Finland would go down for WWE?
It's our market sector is not large enough. We have a population base of about 5.5 million people. If you take the entire population base of the Scandinavian countries, so Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and Finland,
yeah,
you can even throw Estonia in there for, just cherry on top, and you still won't have the population base of Germany.
Okay. Wow.
So the thing is that WWE, they're interested in big numbers. They're looking for that, like, mass appeal. That's why when they come to Europe, they'll come to France, they'll come to Germany, they'll come to the UK. But that's pretty much it. Maybe to Italy or something, but these are all countries with massive population bases. And that is really, like, if they debut somebody like Gunther in WWE, they're going to make sure he's from a population base where he's going to resonate, where they're going to get some, like, traction. So I don't see them being all that interested in getting somebody from Finland, to be honest with you, just because of their business model, just because of the way that they're structured. Certainly not as a main event player, because of the fact that, like, well, if you say that, if you're going to profile somebody from Finland, say he's from Helsinki, what does that mean? They had Ludwig Borg back in 93, 94. It's like, what did that ever mean?
Right.
The Hellraiser from Helsinki against Lex Luger. I mean, what money what cash, what bottom line did that ever draw? None. It was a flop. So with that in mind, I'm sure WWE is, if they're going to come to Europe, they're going to come to a big city like Berlin.
A bigger one. Okay. No, and that makes sense, like Bash in Berlin or something. Yeah. Well, I've heard you say you were really a go-to guy for WWE when they do go to Finland for not such an event like a PLE. And you also worked for WWE for 6 years commentating.
Actually, for Eurosport, but I did.
Okay.
Yeah, but WWE was what I commentated. Yes.
Okay. Very cool. How did that come about, that opportunity?
Eurosport got a hold of me just because if anybody in Finland is associated as far as their name equals professional wrestling, it's me, right? So it's like anybody who knows anything about wrestling will say, oh, Starbuck, right?
Yeah.
It's just, I've been in the media now for like over 25 years in this country.
Right.
Because of that fact, people, they know my face. They know my voice. They hear, they see me, whatever else, they'll know who I am. By and large, I mean, I still get emails every once in a while, or direct messages from, let's say, single mothers or whatever in northern Finland. on the coast of Norway, up in the Arctic Circle, who say my 14-year-old son is a huge fan of yours. Can you please send a fan card, like a undersigned, or like a signed card, or like some photo or whatever? He'd really, it would make his day.
Yeah.
And so with that in mind, I mean, it's like I'm lucky to have been in that position where WWE knows who I am.
Yeah.
It's just Finland is not that kind of a market sector for them. And if they come here, they'll come for a show in Helsinki. Once every few years. They used to come back in, was it 2002? They were here 2003, 2004, 5, 6, 7. I think they came for that period. Yeah, they were here, and then they came again in 2009, and they didn't come again until 2019. And they had lost their TV at that point. They came based on, in 2019 when I was there. I was actually their I was hired by Live Nation, approved by WWE for Live Nation to be their what do you call that? It's the ambassador.
Yeah.
I was the domestic ambassador for WWE when they came in 2019. So I did their PR.
Wow.
I was the one that explained to the press and to the people here basically what professional wrestling is. Yeah. So, but they came in 2019 based on the strength of their YouTube numbers and their subscription base or subscriber base in Finland for YouTube. And they drew, just with no television, only YouTube, they drew 4,000 people, which not great, not bad, but it was doable.
Yeah.
Just based on YouTube in Helsinki 2019. So with that in mind, that's not the type of number that WWE is looking for. They're looking to do 20,000.
Yeah, of course. Right.
Or 15 or whatever, but unless it's a big show like SummerSlam yesterday, which was 50,000, right?
Yeah.
So with that in mind, once again, it's like, unless the numbers are there, I could see myself, if they ever launch that NXT Europe,
yeah,
I could see myself being a coach for them. I'm sure that would be a possibility. We could also, Slam Wrestling could be, for example, a farm league, or then a satellite affiliate where they could send some of their people to get more experience.
Well, we always hear difference in crowds depending on where you are. We've seen with these international PLEs that WWE is doing, the crowds are super excited. How would you describe the Finland crowd for someone who's never seen a show that's done in Finland compared to other places you've worked?
Well, Finland is a more reserved country. Here's the thing. When I moved here in 1996, I moved from Canada. So I was living in Ontario at the time, and I moved to Finland in the summer of 96. So Canada, much like the US, is an extroverted society, culture. Finland is an introverted society and culture. At the time, in 96, Finland was actually leading statistically numbers as far as the top 3 countries for suicide in the world were Japan, Australia, and Finland.
Wow.
I moved to the heart of the suicide, like, statistics. The area that I was living, it was like right smack dab in the middle where the numbers were the highest.
Yeah.
So, like, for me, it's like an indication of, if you think that the mindset from the American to the Finnish, it's a world of difference. At least back then it was. Now it's changing because it's a different day and age, of course. The generations change, and our technology and all the internet and blah 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 kind of like makes the world one big melting pot. But even so, I think Finn people still, to a large degree, it helps if they have some alcohol in their blood. Yeah, because
as it does with us all, maybe sometimes.
Yeah, it does with most people, but with Finns, to get them really into something in the middle of the day, for example, to get them hollering, screaming, and losing their minds, without having a bit of something to help them out, not so easy. Not so easy. No, no. It's because Finns have this mentality. They're very concerned about what their neighbor thinks of them, right?
Okay.
So it's like, well, what are they going to think of me if I do this, or what are they going to think if I do that, right?
Yeah.
And they're very concerned about what people think of them. So in that way, if you just let go and just like go for broke, sober,
Yeah.
there is a certain it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah.
But I think that with our business, with our industry, I'm saying professional wrestling in general, we what we offer is escapism. That's what pro wrestling is. It's escapism. And when a person buys a ticket to see a wrestling event, they're hopefully going to forget their mundane lives. They're going to forget the stress at home. They're going to forget their marital problems. They're going to forget their family issues. They're going to forget the fact that maybe they just got laid off of work. Mm-hmm. And they're going to come there for 2 hours, 2.5, whatever have you, to hoot and holler and scream and immerse themselves in a different world.
Yeah.
To almost cathartically cleanse themselves of all the shit that they've been through in the past month or week or whatever have you. Mm-hmm. That's what pro wrestling's there for. It's an escape. So if you can relate to the baby faces, and if you can feel some kind of antipathy or whatever have you for the heels, I think we've done our job. And with that in mind, I think the Finns are no different than anybody else, because I think around the world, people are all the same. People say that, oh, times have changed and people have changed. No, they haven't. No. So technology has changed, but people haven't changed. The same fundamental things make people happy. If you have a cute little Labrador Retriever puppy dog, right, and you show a person of Asian origin, a person of African origin, a person of South American origin, or a person of Caucasian origin, the same puppy dog, they're all going to go, ooh, so cute, so cute.
Yes.
If you show people all around the world, doesn't matter who they are, from what culture, doesn't matter, if you show them an absolutely stunning, beautiful woman like Angelina Jolie in her 20s, mm-hmm, every head is going to turn. Put her in a red dress, and every head is going to turn. They're going to say, who is that? Right? So we're all geared the same way. Everybody is geared the same way. The same things make us happy. The same things make us sad. The same things piss us off. So if you're able to tap into that with your audience around the world, doesn't matter if it's Finland, Japan, America, or Mexico, or whatever else, you're going to create a connection with your audience, because certain emotions are universal.
And a great outlook for someone to have who has their own promotion now. And I feel like you have a lock on that audience. You have a finger on the pulse. We're going to start to wind it down. To bring it back to Slam Wrestling, though, as I'm sure just getting an event off without a hitch is fulfilling enough to you for a lot of these events. But is there one that holds a special place in your heart for Slam Wrestling that's been put on?
Yeah, I would say Super Slam this year in February. I think it's February 10th. It's on Fight TV, by the way, if you want to check it out.
Yeah.
But because I put my career on the line, so I said, I made a promise to myself that before the age of 51, before I turned 51, before I turn the page of 51, I'm going to be a champion again. And I went up against former WWE NXT star Sam Gradwell, who was the Slam champion at the time.
Okay.
I put my career on the line, and that match, the emotion, the pure, how could you say, the gravitas and the emotion of that match, the story going into the match, the execution of said match, everything, the whole kit and caboodle. We had people in the audience crying afterwards.
Wow.
Because I won, crying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's one of the main standout moments. Not maybe it's not the number one in my company life or company career, whatever have you, for Slam Wrestling, but it is one of the top three.
Yeah. And similar question, it could be the same answer, but if someone wants to really get an idea of what Slam Wrestling is all about, what event should they check out, in your opinion?
I would say probably Super Slam, or we have several events up right now. We have our Americana Slam Wrestling Showcase, which is our newest offering on Fight. We have a smaller or shorter show, which is a 2-hour show called Metallica Slam. When Metallica was here this summer, they did a Friday and a Sunday in Helsinki at the stadium, and we did the Saturday in between for pro wrestling. But there was a shit ton of things happening around the city, so it wasn't a huge crowd. It was a smaller hall, and we drew a medium-sized audience, but it was a really good card, really good for 5 matches. It's a very solid card. I recommend checking that one out. We also have something called Wrestling Slam, which is from the end of last year. It was our first offering on Fight. It was from December. My first match against Sam Gradwell, just for the main event. Check it out, only for the main event. That card and that event has the Mid-South old NWA smoky arena feel to it. When you watch it, you will feel like you have transposed in time, that you traveled back in time to a place that no longer exists. You will get that emotion. And the match itself, we didn't hit the ropes a single time from what I recall. 28 minutes for the match. Did not hit the ropes. When you think of modern wrestling, it's got to be like this, got to be like that, got to be exciting, it's got to have all these spots. No, we wrestled and we did business, and we put out a match that I'm sure Bill Watts would be glad to watch today. I believe that anybody from the old school that's still around, anybody from Ric Flair to Jim Cornette, would be able to watch that match and say, this is what our industry should be. I believe that from the bottom of my heart. I believe that. And when you look at the production values, like I'm not saying that it's a 5-star WWE production in that way, but for the smoky arena, true grit, old school feel of what wrestling used to be, is exactly what we offered.
Wow. And that's such a cool full circle thing right there, too, from what you said in the beginning of the interview. That is what Slam Wrestling is all about. That's the niche you guys are tapping into. So that event,
the niche in one catchphrase or in one sales pitch is wrestling the way that you remember it.
Yeah. And that'll definitely be in the intro to this entire interview right there. That's good. It's a good one. Well, I mean, really, thank you so much for making the time to come on here. It's been really cool hearing just a bit of your journey of like it was over 30 years in the business, and the waves you're making in Finland are great. You're very wise now after those 30 years, but what would be the advice you would give to young Rebel Starbuck about to embark on this journey?
The advice that I give myself, if I could speak to myself.
Yes. Younger version.
I would say that whatever opportunities are ever presented to you, make the most out of every single one of them. Don't let fear take precedence. That if you're uncertain or unsure about any single thing, just don't let that fear play into your decision making. I was offered the chance in my sophomore year in 1995 to go to Mexico because I drove Ultimo Dragon on a tour for IWA. I was his driver for a week in Manitoba. And every day I would drive him to the gym at the end of the tour. He says to me, "Hey, you want to go to Mexico?" "Yeah, I'd like to go to Mexico." "You give me tape." VHS tape. Back in those days, we had VHS tape. "So give me a VHS tape of your matches. I'll take it to Mexico." He's living in Mexico City at the time, married to a Mexican lady. I was like, "You give me tape, I bring to Mexico." I said, "I don't know how to wrestle lucha, because in lucha libre, you have to wrestle from the right side. Everywhere else in the world, you have to learn the left side. We are taught the left side. So I was like, I didn't know how to wrestle the lucha style. I was unsure about working the right side. I don't know how to wrestle lucha. Oh, lucha easy, lucha easy. You give me tape. I bring to Mexico. And I never sent him the tape. I never got the chance because I passed it up due to fear of working the right side of the body. And to this day, 30 years into my active profession, 32 years in the business, I still feel the pang of, never having gone to Mexico.
Wow.
And I believe that maybe that day might still come by the grace of God. It still can come. I mean, the funny thing is I just promoted two Mexican mini wrestlers I brought to France just over a week ago. So Mascarita Sagrada and Galito were brought from Mexico for a private party that I sold the wrestling portion of to France. So Slam Wrestling Finland promoted in France.
Yeah.
And these two guys wrestled. Mexican minis wrestled in France just over a week ago. With that in mind, the door is open once again to Mexico because I made it happen. So who knows, by the grace of God, maybe at the age of 51 still, maybe I'll be in Mexico. But that's the one thing I'd give to myself as advice is never let the fear play into your decision making. Walk headlong into fear. Do what you need to do. Just live your life. Just take every opportunity given to you because the things at the end of your life, it's going to be worse for you to look back and say, I wish I would have done this and I wish I would have done that. Instead of saying I did this, this, and this, and this, and that didn't work out, and that was kind of shitty, but I got to do it.
Yeah.
I'd rather be the guy that said that I fucked up, I did what I did, I learned my lesson, but at least I tried. Instead of being the guy who's going to be on my deathbed one day saying, damn, I wish I would have done that. Yeah, it's too late now.
Excellent answer. That gave me chills. That was great. That was really good advice for just life and your career. Well, again, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Coming on.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. Appreciate that. So I hope that anybody out there just check out Slam Wrestling. All of our socials are found at /SLAMWRES and slamres.com is our official website.
Rewind, recap, relive. For over 50 episodes, the revolutionary force in wrestling interviews.